What on earth is this? Hello, and welcome to this rather pleasant afternoon in the far eastern outskirts of Berlin, in the suburb of Rahnsdorf, or Rahnsdorf, as I'm sure it's supposed to be said, but I'm not going to do that, because I'm already pretentious enough with this accent. And when I say the outskirts of Berlin, I really mean it. We are practically in Poland out here. Rahnsdorf lies at the far end of the Muggelsee, Berlin's largest bathing lake. And today I've come out here to take a look at one of the strangest quirks of transport infrastructure anywhere in Europe. And it comes courtesy of a hat maker, an extensive public petition, and a majestic commuter ferry that looks like this. This is the story of the Paula 3, Berlin's state-run rowboat service. A long time ago, in this rather pleasant little corner of Germany, there was a man called Richard Hilligus who made hats for a living. Not much is known about when he began making hats, but according to German sources, by 1911 he had become frustrated with the apparently endless stream of people asking him how to cross the river, named the Muggelsee, which ran through the village. And no, before you ask, Muggelsee and Muggelsee have nothing to do with wizards. I'm sorry to break all the hearts of you Harry Potter fans out there. Anyway, how all these wandering souls ended up in this random town without knowledge of how to cross the river that runs through it, or why they all appeared to complain about it within earshot of the local hat maker, remains unknown, at least as far as my Google searches could take me. And without the infrastructure required to build a bridge or a tunnel, Mr. Hilligus decided to launch his very own ferry service to shut everyone up, shepherding lost Berliners back and forth across the Muggelsee on Saturdays, Sundays, and public holidays. The journey did, and to this day still does, cover 30 metres across this small river, taking around 1 minute to cross, or around 12 rows of the oar, which is not a unit of measurement you're likely to see anywhere else. And ever the Samaritan, good old Mr. Hilligus kept this up for 32 years until... There's little information about what happened to Mr. Hilligus during the war, and it's widely reported that his wife took over the ferry for a few years. But beyond that, this era is generally a little bit hazy. But as a side note, you know how many major cities have a public transportation authority, like how London has Transport for London, or TfL as it's more commonly known, or New York City has the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, or MTA? Well, Berlin, since 1928, has had its own version of this, called the Berliner Verkehrsbetriebe, or BVG, and much like TfL, it is publicly funded and state-owned. And in 1947, it deemed Mr. Hilligus's ferry, now helmed by new captain Richard Hoernke, enough of a vital public service that it took charge of the boat, folded it into Berlin's official public transit network, and gave it a new name, F24, or F24. So to clarify, this is a rowboat that seats about 5 people, and is actually maintained, scheduled, and operated by the German government. This boat, and the man who rows people back and forth across the river, are beholden to the state and the Transport Ministry. The ferry service continued under the auspices of the East German government even after the formal division of Germany into East and West during the Cold War, with Captain Richard Hoernke helming the boat all the way up until 1978, when the apparently iconic local hero Paul Rahn took over. In the final days of East Germany and following German reunification, Rahn became something of a local celebrity as this quirky public transit fascination became more widely known. The current iteration of the ferry, the Paula 3, built in 1993, is even named after him, as you can see here. Following Rahn's death in 2002, the captaincy was passed down to Ronald Kabelman, but then disaster struck. In 2013, the BVG, in its infinite wisdom, declared the F24 route would be scrapped for cost-cutting reasons, citing maintenance of this boat. This tiny boat was apparently too much for BVG to handle, bleeding their coffers dry and hurtling them towards bankruptcy, and it was taken off the water. That's the one downside of socialised public transportation, its lack of sympathy for a romantic narrative. But shortly after, a petition was launched which garnered 18,000 signatures calling for the reinstatement of the F24 ferry, with even the local football club throwing their weight behind the movement. In the end, Andreas Geisel, Senator for Urban Development for Berlin, stepped in, reversing the decision to scrap the service and, being an East Berliner, telling reporters of his childhood memories of sailing across the Muggelsee with Paul Rahn. And in 2015, 2 years after it was canned, the Paula 3 came back out of storage and hit the water once more, being handed back its designation as one of Berlin's 6 official ferry routes, and ridership being included in tickets covering BVG Tariff Zone B. And yes, that means you can use your actual commuter travel card to board this 1-minute plastic rowboat ride. And here it is today, nestled in this pleasant corner of Berlin, helmed by new captain Marcel Franke. If you don't have a travel card, you can simply pay a €2 fare and hop over to the other side of the Muggelspray, where you can then annoy Marcel by asking if he can take you straight back.
You want back?
Maybe maybe a little bit. I'm just gonna film here, if that's okay.
Yeah, no
Cool.
problem.
Thank you very much.
Despite the ferry only being scheduled, and yes, it does have an actual government-sanctioned schedule, to run once an hour. And when you're done with that, you can sit back on the banks of the Muggelspray, grab a beer or a smoked fish that comes out of a big box, as seems to be the local delicacy, and enjoy this unique slice of quirky history in Berlin's mammoth transportation network.